Chapter 15. Breaking Water's Hold. On the fourth day the flags spoke without sound. From the far pickets a runner's hand cut twice. Wing, wing, and the boy at Marius's rack answered with the smallest lift of blue, then let it fall. No drum, no horn, only the air shifting its shoulders in the way weather does when it is about to be asked for obedience. Riff felt the camp notice without needing to be told. Pikes lengthened their patience. Archers checked string by touch. Hale's hand made the quiet promise it always made, hold, and lines settled their feet deeper into soil that had learned their names. Gold had already risen. Raina took the sky like a tool she had sharpened that morning. Severin went after her, black folding itself into the higher shade until he was a thought in dark lacquer. They climbed not for pageant, but to be where a curve could become judgment. The pale blue came low, riderless, quick, neat, and not looking left. There was no flourish. Only the efficiency of a hawk that had forgotten it had ever not been a hawk. Now, Rena said, though no one on the ground could hear it, and put herself wrong in the air on purpose. Gold crossed the blue's path at an angle that made instinct and pride fight. Severin slid under, lifting a wingtip with the gentleness of a hand at a door. Here. The pale thing could not resist the invitation written in the grammar dragons teach each other before they teach themselves. He dove to answer a challenge that was not a challenge, and Raina took his wind away. No breath to flame, no room to claw. The world removed his choices one by one until the last honest one remained, fall or be caught. They took him down like a bolt unwound, spiral, power bled without cruelty, and set him into the long, clean glide over Earth Riff had already claimed. She was there, armour humming its refusal, mare steady, the gorget ready to drink. Back! She said when the blue's foreclaws scored the air as if air itself could be punished. It was not a shout. It was a word a body remembers after it has forgotten its own name. The change came like iron cooling. Heat ran out of the blue and the blue ran out of itself. Where scale had learned to lie, skin came back with no kindness. Where wing had made decisions, a man's arms arrived in panic. He spun in that humiliating, naked way of people whose forms have betrayed them, then collapsed into the shape his own bones allowed. He hit the dirt the way men who have been trying not to a long time do, all at once. He was filthy. Whip marks crossed his back with the tidy impatience of someone who enjoys neatness more than mercy. The rags that clung to him belonged to no army and no home. The fear on his face was not of death. It was the slavish terror of a creature trained to look up, always up, and ask permission from a single mouth. "She will come," he whispered to no one, and to all of them, voice half-cracked and child-soft with dread. "Do not let her see me. Do not let her take me back." Raina dropped to human form with the practiced lack of ceremony of a woman who has found the right size of herself and no longer needs applause for wearing it. She did not touch him first. She let the air between them settle into something that was not a threat. "I see you," she said. "You are out of the water." People hear the truth they are ready for. He heard only the word that had owned him. "Mistress," he gasped, flinching away from the kindness of it as if it were a lash. "No," Raina said, absolute and gentle. "Not that word for me. Not for anyone. Mine is a keeper, if you ask it. Or friend, if you learn it." Severin's hand went to his belt pouch. He drew out a loop of old leather, scarred, softened with tallow, the buckle tongued dull by years. The first collar he had worn when he had not remembered he was a man. He did not make a ceremony of letting it go. He set it in the pale man's palm the way men lay bread, offering, not order. "Guard," Severin said, finding the syllable he had once learned to save his own life. "Chosen, if you want it." The pale man's breath hitched. He turned the old band in his filthy fingers with reverent panic, and, when Rhianna did not forbid him, he fastened it around his own neck. The tiny catch of the buckle made a small, honest sound. "There can be no better than gold," he blurted, desperate to please what had not asked to be pleased. "I will serve a better mistress." Rhianna flinched, not from the words but at what had made them possible. "You will not serve," she corrected, very soft, very firm. "You will be kept. That is different. We will show you how to keep yourself." Then she stood and turned to Riff as if they were in a kitchen and a guest had arrived cold. Clothes, food, water hot enough to be apologized to. Not here. She looked at the lines, the watching, the way pity ripples through people and can become cruelty by being too public. Question him later. "Severin," she added, eyes to the black. "Take him. Make water ordinary again." Severin nodded and did what he had learned from watchful women. He covered the man quickly and, without making a stage of it, put bread into his hands and led him quietly, the old leather lying with its returned weight honest, toward the quarter where the medics did their plainest work. Rhianna went as far as the picket line, and no farther. Gold lay down there and watched the camp do what camps do when it is allowed to be decent. The army held. The fourth day wore itself to a brown edge and did not spill over. Hale's teeth were out where they needed to be. Men came, were disappointed, and left as men always do when pride meets a wall and discovers that walls do not argue. When Severin brought him back, the man looked like someone reality might be willing to reconsider. Steam had erased the sharpest cruelty of filth from him. Someone, without ceremony, with competence, had seen to the worst of the lash and to starving bruises that had forgotten how to fade. He wore clean wool that did not beg, and boots that had done honest work before him and intended to again. The leather lay against his throat, as if purpose had returned to it and found it acceptable. They sat him under canvas, not in Rife's tent, not in Hale's, the small square space the supply sergeant lent to truths that must not become rumours. Rhianna took the space at his left where she could be heard. Riff stood at his right because some people tell the truth better when no one is seated above them. Hale waited where men wait when they mean to listen until there is something a hand can do. "Tell me," Riff said. He swallowed. His voice tried for report. It was the right choice. "She lives in the lake," he said. "Not on it. In it. The Western King's castle sits on an island inside it, and once the bridge belonged to men, now it belongs to her. It comes when she laughs and goes when she frowns. It keeps its own accounts. So does the water. We drink at her leave, we cross at her leave, we speak at her leave and forget by her command." His hands had tucked themselves under his thighs, as if worried they might betray him by gesturing too clearly and calling punishment down by enthusiasm. He forced one out and held it open, palm up, to show it empty. It shook, and he let it. "She calls herself nothing, the way storms call themselves nothing and eat houses," he said. "Others call her lady, because it is the only word a mouth will make there without choking." He looked up briefly at Rhaina and away again, as if he had been taught not to look into the sun. "She broke the court into playthings. The king is a boy with too many toys. He laughs as he drowns. Courtiers hold parties underwater because the wine is better that way," he said, something like a grin breaking and dying in the telling. "Most of them do not know they are underwater. The air there is lies. The light is lies. Only the pull of a tide at the wrong hour tells the truth if your skin remembers rivers. Some women claw their hands to stay awake. They hide salt under their tongues and try to taste it when the world goes sweet. Sometimes it works. Sometimes they bleed and call it fashion." He took a breath that did not steady him. The collar rose and fell on it like a small boat sheltering near a pier. "She keeps your prince," he said. not able to make himself say Marius's name, as men do when refusing to declare friends dead. He is charmed. He is always at her side. He holds the wind on a leash for her, and she uses it when illusion is not enough. When she laughs, windows show summer, and men go outside and freeze. When she frowns, doors move. When she is bored, bridges do tricks for her. Hale's mouth made the harsh line old women make when they see children playing near a cliff with their eyes shut. "Does he know us?" Raina asked, not unkind, not letting herself be gentle either. The man's face did something that would have been a sob if he had permitted it. "Sometimes," he said. The sky moves wrong over the lake and he frowns. He asks for a ledger. She gives him a mirror. He apologizes and laughs and stands when she stands. When she takes his hand, the wind starts to cry and then it stops because it's been taught to. Riff's palm found the gorget, not to ask it for force, only for steadiness. She looked to Hale. He had no orders to give that were not already being carried out by men who had learned they can only eat one day at a time. "Names," she said to the man, because names are knives that cut ropes. He flinched. The old words, "do not," rose to his teeth and broke. "Casaria," he whispered. They called her that before, when she was a woman and not water. Casaria of the spring weir. She drowned once. The river loved her more than any man did. It kept her. She learned how to be water, then decided to be everyone's lady. "And you?" Raina asked, very soft. "What did they call you when you were not blue?" His hand went up as if to shield his face from his own memory. Then it lowered. He looked at Severin instead of at women who might pity him, because pity will sometimes make a man into what he fears he is. "Rishan," he said as if the syllables might shatter in his teeth. He swallowed them again, properly this time. "Rishan, I belong to no one." "Good," Raina said. "Rishan, you will stay in our lines, and you will not go anywhere near a horizon without asking. Eat with men. Sleep with a dog at your feet, if you can find one that trusts you. Learn dirt again." He nodded, tears surprising him by not being punished. Then he looked to Riff with the mad hope of men on their first night under a roof that was promised to be theirs. "Will you keep me?" he asked, meaning, will you not hand me back to the water because it would be tidy? Riff did what Riff always did when asked for mercy and found it in stock. "Yes," she said. "Under law, under covenant. The only price is that you do not lie to us." He put his forehead to the packed earth and let breath go in a way that means alive. Severin's hand went to his shoulder and stayed there, not to restrain, to remind. Outside, the fourth day finished. Men ate in the correct way with gratitude and poor taste. Cooks bullied pots. The line checked its buckles and its temper. Under canvas, Hale said the sentence everyone had been waiting to hear someone dare speak. "We are not taking a gate," he said. "We are taking a bridge that lies." Rife nodded. "We will need finesse this time. You hold the line. I'll go, with any woman willing to march with me, to see this lady of the lake." Raina stood, and the canvas remembered to be warmer. "When she intends to fetch what she thinks is hers," Gold said, "no boast, all duty. We will be there." Severin's mouth did the small, feral thing that used to be fear and was becoming something better. And we will not let water have what it has not earned. Chapter 16. The 100. When choice was called for, women came. Not many. One for every 500 men, if you were doing the sort of counting that makes quartermasters calm. But not many is not nothing, and nothing would not have been enough. They queued themselves by habit, not by rank, stable girls with knees that knew saddles better than chairs, archers who had learned to mend their own bowstrings, wagoners whose hands had been bitten by rope, 2 smiths' daughters with arms like the truth, a quiet handful of camp wives who had chosen their own terms and kept them, 3 who had taken coin for company and never once given away their right to say no. Scars were worn where they lived. Across knuckles, along hairlines, down forearms, badges not for pity but for provenance. Other marks were hidden because some truths prefer the dark to being turned into spectacle. Several slipped pins into their hair and belts, with the efficiency of people who know a kind of night that requires both hospitality and insurance. Almost all wanted to go. Rife said no to some, because wanting and being able are not the same thing and because an army eats. The old cooks came in a body, aprons folded like standards. "If we go," one said, "you'll eat stones." "You're coming nowhere," Riff answered, tender and iron together. "The line will hold because you hold spoons and knives where they belong." Then she added, "Because a promise sits better when it has a piece of luck in it. One of you, though, the one who can make a cleaver speak." "Leora," the others said in the same breath, and a broad woman with a laugh like a bell unslung a butcher's knife that had cut meat and, once, a raider. She kissed the ladle she left behind as if it were a child and came to stand at Riff's shoulder, the cleaver riding her belt like a doctrine. The surgeons came, clean-handed and fierce. Riff refused them as well with gratitude that did not blink. "You are the breath that follows the wound," she said. "We cannot spend breath twice." They went back to their tents burning and obedient and turned their anger into mended kit and sharpened needles. The rest she took. Not because she thought numbers measured right against sorcery, but because choice is a kind of sorcery that answers to no one. And she trusted it. These women had been allowed to live here on their terms. Now they meant to hold those terms against a lady who had learned to bend men's. When she looked at them, perhaps 100 in all, Riffe felt a pride that did not need flattery. Those who could ride took horse or mule, those who could not took a cart. Weapons were what hands trusted. Spears, pikes cut shorter because reach is not always an advantage on a lying bridge. Cudgels with stories in their grain, pole hooks, a rake refitted with iron studs, knives of every temper and lineage, a hatchet with someone's grandmother's initials burned into the haft, Leora's cleaver shining with the abstract sincerity of a tool that has always meant what it did. They understood the job. Keep men away from Riff if water makes their wills soft. Keep each other from the same if pretty lies started to look like mercy. Put a wall of choice between one woman and a lake that called itself a lady. Hale stood them with a soldier's tact. Close enough to honour, far enough not to make a ceremony of something that did not ask for it. Rhaena paced the skyline with gold banking tight, a coin turning. Severin shadowed her, black waiting where shade is useful. "We'll wait on the wind. War is not for dragons. Come back," she said, already looking toward where the lake would be. "Signals," Riff told them all, her voice even and carrying. "No horns. Flags only in threes, and only from hands I've seen. Names don't get said. If she gives you a mother's voice or a child's cry, you throw rope, not yourself. Salt under the tongue if you start smiling at nothing. Pair up. If one stumbles, the other becomes the ground. If we have to cut a line, we cut it ourselves." Leora grunted approval and slid a pouch of coarse salt into her bodice. Others followed. Bits of yarn found wrists and belts and paired them, woman to woman, not as leashes but as agreements. A boy with a dog tried to come. Riff sent the boy to Tarsa, who was needed at the line and properly angry about it. Riff mounted. The mare flicked an ear and took the weight of iron as if it were her own idea. The 100 formed without parade, 2s and 3s and a loose spine down the middle where runners could carry a hand signal. They did not sing. They did not pray aloud. They rode. The road to the lake tried small deceptions at first, like a gambler testing a mark. A patch of shade tasted cooler than it was. A thicket looked like an orchard from one angle and like a memory from another. The women chewed salt or spat once if a sweet wind tried to make a promise. They watched each other's eyes the way soldiers watch each other's feet in mud. A few times men lurched out of nowhere, mad and glassy-eyed, and were left by the wayside, handled quietly, sometimes without Riffe's notice. By noon of the third day they reached the last rise before the water. The lake wore its stillness like court clothes. The island sat easy within it, the Western King's castle clean and smug against a sky that had no business being that blue. No bridge. Eat, Riff said. Bread and jerked meat appeared without drama. Water was taken in measured sips. Leora bullied one girl into finishing her apple because the body is owed stubborn kindnesses before it is owed glory. Rules again, Riff said when fingers had been licked and crumbs brushed. If you see something you love more than your own name, blink. If it is still there after 3 blinks, tell your partner and let her decide if you're allowed to keep looking. I go. You make sure no one follows me where I must go. No one argued with a plan that contained both mercy and refusal in equal measure. They went down to the shore. Riff dismounted and handed the reins to a girl who had never let a horse make up its mind. She stepped forward until lake damp took the dust off her boots. The armor's quiet spread around her like a discipline. She did not shout. Her voice went out across the water as if it belonged there. Casaria of the Spring Weir, she said, each name set carefully on the surface. By courtesy, come speak on the ground. I have business with you. The lake laughed, not the way people laugh. The sound came from behind them and ahead, from the left and the right, from underfoot. A piece of shore pretended to move and then did not. Light changed its mind and went back to being honest. The bridge slid out from the island like a pale tongue learning manners. It was beautiful in the way things are when beauty is a choice, arches that invited, stones that promised no one would get wet. It stopped 2 paces away from where Riff stood and waited, as if it were generous. Be ready, Riff said. Pairs checked each other. Salt touched tongues. A few women smiled, on purpose at each other, to force the face into a truth muscle remembers. Rife set her boot on the first stone. It was there. The second was there too. The third thought about lying and changed its mind under the steel's hum. Behind her, the 100 arranged themselves along the bank and onto the first spans, 3s and 5s, lungs steady, eyes rude and awake. No men crossed the rise yet. Keep men away from me, Riffe had said, if water decides to be kind. They would. That was the work. She would do hers. She walked on, iron making a small weather of its own around her, toward a castle that had forgotten the difference between luxury and drowning, and a woman who had taught water to be a leash. The bridge purred like flattery under her boot. Riff did not answer it. The 100 did not let the lake count them as anything except a fact. They rode to get there. Now they would stand.